All right, welcome everyone to the King County Regional Homeless Committee meeting. We'll begin now. If we could call roll.
Nancy Backus.
Here.
Claudia Balducci is having some tech difficulties. We'll return to her. Angela Burney.
Here.
Dow Constantine.
Here.
Jenny Durkin.
Here.
Lorena Gonzalez.
Present.
Jonathan Hemphill. Jonathan, it looks like we've got you, but I can't hear you. All right, I can see you. We'll mark you present and I'll work with you on your audio. Andrew Lewis.
Present.
Kirk McLean. Joe McDermott.
Here.
Zanita Reed.
Sarah, I'm here. Claudia Balducci.
Thank you, Claudia. All right. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, so we have 10 members present.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We'll now take up the first meeting, the first item, which will be approval of the minutes from the April 15th amendment. Does anyone move approval?
Madam Chair, I move approval.
Thank you, Member Backus. Anyone second?
Second.
No. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there any opposed to adopting the minutes? The minutes will therefore be adopted. Thank you for that. We'll now move to the public comment phase. This will not exceed 15 minutes and the comment period will be limited for each speaker. Would remind people to keep it civil and follow the rules of decorum. With that, Sarah, could we begin public comment, please?
Yes, so for members of the public who would like to sign up, please enter your name in the chat or raise your hand at this time. At this moment, we have no one signed up for public comment, so I'll wait just a minute. Oh, there we go. We have one person. All right, so folks, each person will have 2 minutes to speak and I will unmute you. First up is Cindy Drushba. Cindy, 1 second while I give you the ability to talk. All right, Cindy, you should be able to unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes when you are ready.
Hello.
Hi, Cindy. Go ahead and start.
Okay, I just want to talk about some important points that have happened over the last month. Sorry that I come to this meeting, but there's just, with COVID, there haven't been any general meetings where we can go discuss this with our government officials. I just want to say I watched the Housing is Healthcare, Affordable Housing Week, and it was a very good webinar. I'd encourage everybody to go watch it. It talks about how we should be doing permanent supportive housing and setting that up. And I think over the last 10 years, that hasn't occurred. I would just like, when we get started again, to all the agencies to be on board, do it a little bit more with checks and balances so the homeless really know what's happening to them. Because they're very confused at the end of it. And then they realize they have to live there forever. I'd also like to say I'm excited about the 1,300 vouchers that are going to be issued for Seattle, King County, and the Renton Housing Authority to talk about how to use them, and they're going to let the regional homeless authority give those out. I would just like to request maybe that you give some consideration to letting people move out of permanent supportive housing if they no longer need that, and that could be done with tenant-based vouchers, and then you would open up spots for people who do need permanent supportive housing, because there's obviously a great need. I'd also like to say that many of you know there's a bid of only $7,000 to in a public disclosure. So a state agency who monitors affordable housing can give the statistics out of how much rent burden there is in affordable housing. And I think if we knew how much rent burden there really was in affordable housing, we could design better buildings where people would want to live in. Because what happens is the very low income, under 30% of the AMI.
Thank you, Cindy. I think you may have accidentally muted yourself, but that worked out where that was the end of your 2 minutes. So thank you for your comment. We have no one else signed up for public comment at this.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Cindy, for your comment. We'll move to the next item in the agenda, but do want to recognize our fellow board member and Council President Gonzalez and the tragedy that her family suffered, and thank her for her leadership here and across our city and region on all issues, and just know the thoughts of everyone on the board are with you. The special meeting was to be able to have Mark Dones go back and further study his staffing plan to present to the governing committee. And with that, Mark Dones, who is our new CEO, but who has been constantly in the range of a fire hydrant coming at him and many things, has some good news to share for us on what the staffing plan looks like for this year into next year. And with that, Mark, welcome and back. We're glad to have you, and we'll let you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mayor Durkin. And I want to echo your comments for Council President Gonzalez. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. I am going to share my screen, and we will get going. All right. So our goal today, I'm just going to talk quickly about our financial position, the timeline for staffing plan development, request a budget authorization vote, and then with remaining time, provide a brief update for you and the public just on some new members of the team. Hopefully this will take a grand total of 20-ish minutes, and we will all be able to end this meeting at least a little bit early. So with that, I'm going to dive right into the financial position. You received this information in your packets, and I had the opportunity to work with many of your staff, so hopefully there are no surprises here. But to start, I just want to sort of take a step back and paint the broad picture. The 2021 available funding for the authority as startup, right, was about $3.8 million. This includes an in-kind contribution from the county of roughly $600,000 for space at the Yesler building, which, you know, nobody's using right now. But we've got it, and we're grateful. If I drill down into the simplified budget, what you'll see is that the staffing request that I put forward is about $1.3 million. That's prorated. The overhead expenditure, including in-kind rent, is about $2.4 million for a total expenditure of roughly $3.7. Running against the revenue of $3.8, we have a remainder of roughly $70,000, about $6,896. As I have said repeatedly to everyone, I'm going to spend that money too. Don't worry about it. It's going someplace. To drill down into the budget actuals, again, we have a staffing request of about 1.3, overhead expenditures of about 1 million, for a total of about 2.3 expended against uncommitted revenue, right, of about 2.3. The difference is in what follows that 3, and that is where we get to the $68,000. With regard to annualization, which I heard a lot from the committee and around concern that we would be able to hold positions and also staff appropriately, I have followed up with both the city and county, who again have been extremely helpful to run some additional analysis on projected 22 numbers. So as of right now, the projected 22 admin dollars for staffing come in at about $5.9 million. This number is conservative. It actually is likely to fluctuate up, but that's subject to appropriation. And since I like to deal in real things, I'm gonna keep this at 5.9 until there is appropriation to back that it is gonna go up. With that though, I expect to staff at about 35 people across divisions with salary bands that are commensurate to existing positions at both the city and the county. That is the budget. Any questions or comments from the committee before I briefly move into the timeline around staffing?
Do we have any questions from any of the board members? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll let you continue on, Mark.
Awesome. So timeline for staffing development, I just want to make sure that everyone sees sort of like what we're working with, where we're headed against some real months, some of which are very soon. So to be clear, we're launching our sub-regional planning efforts beginning in June. In July, we will use the portion completed of that are necessary to have a more granular understanding of how many staff need to support which books of business across the county. In September, we will have a report on the sub-regional plans. Also in September, we will begin contract and systems migration and 2022 hiring. Very busy month, September for us. So I really want to be clear that our goal is to have a full migration of all of the Seattle contracts by December 31, and the majority of the county contracts and system components by that same date. I want to delineate contract from system component. I think there's been a little bit of confusion there. I expect that the vast majority of contracts, like 99%, from city and county, will all be migrated by that time. Definitively all city, I expect most of the county. System component is separate from contract. So there's also quite a bit of data, there are servers, there's the HMIS system, right? Those system component migrations may stretch into the beginning of next year, January, February predominantly, as we ensure that there is the adequate infrastructure on the authority side to catch those things as they come over. We will then begin sort of immediately developing our regional RFP. And that will be the full rebidding of the system for the 23 contracts and services. So that is the high-level timeline that we're looking at. Any questions or concerns about it?
McDermott?
Go ahead, Mr. McDermott.
Thank you. Mark, can you speak a little bit more, just compare and contrast, make me understand the regional, well, I can't help you make me understand. Can you say a few words about the sub-regional planning versus the regional RFP development?
Yes. So the sub-regional planning is our deep dives into the sub-regions to understand what are folks working with, right? What are they working with? What do they not have? What are the gaps in services? What are people experiencing homelessness saying about the things that they need? Over the course of July and August, we'll be doing quite a bit of groundwork and site visits to visit programs, to sit with people, to visit encampments across the region, all with the goal of having a really granular understanding of what the needs are in each sub-region. The regional RFP development will absolutely pull from that data and then be used to say, like, okay, so then the system that we need to bid out for 23, right, has to include the kinds of resources necessary to support South King County, East King County, North King County, et cetera. Why those are not sort of immediately overlaid is around the hiring and the system stand-up, right? So the faster that we have staff in seats to begin making use of that information and turning it into the 23 RFP, that process could conceivably be accelerated. But the RFP development is really just like, this is the formal process by which we will bid out the things that providers will then do in 23.
Thank
Is
you.
that clarifying?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from other board members? Hearing none, Mark, is there anything you want to add before we would move to a vote to adopt the budget?
No. Next up is conversation and budget authorization vote. So that's all I've got.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adopt the proposed budget that was in the packet?
Madam Chair Backus, I move to approve the budget.
Second by Bernie.
Thank you very much. There's been a motion to approve in a second. I think we should take a roll call vote for this. So Sarah, could you take the roll?
Yes, and I want to also acknowledge that Kirk McLean has joined us as well.
Oh, good. Kirk, welcome.
All right, Nancy Backus,
Aye.
Claudia Balducci,
Aye.
Angela Burney,
Aye.
Dow Constantine,
Aye.
Jenny Durkin,
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez,
Aye.
Jonathan Hemphill,
Aye.
Andrew Lewis,
Aye.
Kirk McLean,
Aye.
Joe McDermott,
Aye.
Councilmember Prince, Zanita Reed. We have 11 ayes, 0 nays.
Congratulations, Mark. You have your first budget, and I think it's a good sign to have this kind of unity behind the beginning of this organization. So congratulations, and now I think you have some news to share about where you are in some of the hires.
Yes, and thank you. And I appreciate that, Mayor Durkin and all of you for working with me in this process. And for the public, I want to say that it was a collaborative process. I had the opportunity to speak with many of the folks who are on the screen at least once. I feel really good about that. I just want to say, like, I feel really good about the work that we did to get here and the conversation that we had. And I want everyone to have optics into it. And with that said, briefly resharing my screen, I just want to let folks know that we have 2 key hires that have been made. And those are Peter Lynn, who's come on board as our Chief Program Officer. Peter has over 20 years of experience in housing and homelessness administration. He was the founding director at LASA, one of our few regional sister agencies in the country that oversees the work for LA City and LA County. He also previously, before that, managed Section 8 for LA, and before that, managed Section 8 for New York City. I have a lot of faith in Peter's ability to be creative, to be innovative, and to center people who are most at need and most vulnerable in how he makes his decisions. And I think that the program team will greatly benefit from his leadership, and we as a community will benefit from his leadership. I also have Ian Martins as our Director of External Affairs and Communications. Ian comes from a lot of experience in political and homelessness and housing comms, previously coming off of about 6 years at the Gates Foundation as a communications officer dedicated to housing and homelessness, but has also done quite a bit of campaign work and political work, and has a fierce dedication to making sure that the narrative that we have in our community around homelessness is accurate, is fact-based, and centers the voices of those who need the support. And really grateful to have Anne on the team. I have a candidate in line for Chief Community Impact Officer. They have been approved by the leadership committee of the Lived Experience Coalition, which for folks who have not looked heavily at our process around hiring for these roles, what we do is I do an interview. If it makes sense, then we move to an interview with the Lived Experience Coalition. They have to vote to move that person forward. If that vote goes well, then they go to a final panel interview with city, county, and SCA, or really suburban community, not SCA proper staff. And then if that goes well, then they get the job. So we do have a process in place. It's not just sort of like in the dark of the night appointing, but have a candidate who has been confirmed by the LEC. They have their final interview early next week, and I hope to be able to announce that role soon. And that is it. And it's 20 past the hour, so I really feel great today.
I thank you for that, Mark. I think also you might want to mention that the City of Seattle is working with the regional authority, the county, and our labor to lend staff also to make sure that there's a very smooth transition.
Thank you, Mayor Durkin. And yes, that is important to know. So part of that staffing assumption about the ability to have contracts begin to migrate in September is based on a clarifying conversation that I had with Tess and Helen at HSD around the capacity of the city to either transfer admin dollars in advance so that I can post to hire, or to be able to loan staff with bodies of work. As we get into the next days, really, not even necessarily weeks, that process will get ironed out and become clear, and so we'll know what we're going to do there. But we are confident that we'll be able to manage the work as it comes over, and we're grateful to the city for making sure that that's going to be possible.
Thank you. And I just say, I think this is a really exciting moment. I think being able to hire 2 national leaders in those roles is a great affirmation of what we're starting here. And want to open up to any board member that might have any final questions before we adjourn. Hearing no questions. Board Member Balducci.
I just feel like I want to before we just adjourn, say a word or two. I wanted to thank Mark, who did spend a great deal of time with board members between the last meeting and this meeting to make sure we understood the plan forward and how it had changed, understood the proposal, so that we could readily, unanimously, and enthusiastically adopt it today. It's great to see us moving forward. It's great to see people coming on board, and we're getting the eyes and hands and brains to really advance this work. So I just wanted to say a word of appreciation and enthusiastic, let's go before we just adjourn. Thank you for a moment.
Thank you. I think it's right. It's a watershed moment. There's nothing but work ahead of us, but I think it is, again, affirming that the region can come together around this critical humanitarian issue to make some real progress and change. Anyone else want questions for Mark or speak for the good of the order? All right, with that, we will adjourn. Our next meeting is on July 15th, which will be a regular meeting of the board. Good luck to everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Be blessed, everyone.